Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so here we are back now on my laptop. And let's open up the notes, since in a lot of ways it's a really interesting set of information that Micah referred to. So let me go open up those notes let me see, I have to find the notes out of all my vast number of files that I've loaded up here. And so we go to share screen, and there are the notes. And close that and go here. Okay, and so look, we got through chapter 9, so let's go directly to chapter 10 about the role of social media. And okay, so let me see, where does chapter 10 start here? There it is, chapter 10, Diana Owen, media coverage of the 2020 election, journalists and influencers in the misinformation age. Yeah, I mean, this question of what is the truth? Is there such a thing as the truth? I mean, I don't think anybody really believes that we all know everything, but what we can't talk about is social consensus, right? And so that's typically the attack on social media, is that it's increasing the hatred of Americans towards each other. And that's, sooner or later you have spillover where people that are vulnerable, mentally ill, pick up on the extreme ideas being expressed and reaffirmed by in-group formation on social media, by people who, you know, they don't like Black people, for example, and then they get on social media and they talk about how much they don't like Black people, and other people that like them are talking with them through the algorithms on social media, and they reinforce each other's hatreds and more intense. And sooner or later, somebody who's sick, like that boy, an 18-year-old boy in New York State, buys an AR-15 rifle, 2 AR-15 rifles, and goes and murders 10 Black people in Buffalo, New York. That's likely to happen as a consequence of this ease of access to people that will reaffirm what I want to believe, or what a reader wants to believe, wants to feel. Because, you know, people want to feel good, right? Emotion is so important to human beings. And people often don't like stress that comes from uncertainty and insecurity. But if I can find people around me who make me feel good about believing what I want to believe, so I don't feel insecurity and I feel valuable, more valuable that way, a lot of people will fall into that and limit themselves, particularly if they're not paying a price for their wrongness of their beliefs. And of course, the price might be, for example, getting sick with the coronavirus because they believe misinformation about the vaccines, that the vaccines are putting in a microchip in your body to surveillance you, for example. But that's not good for running a society, a community of people in which we want a society in which people have a fundamental commitment to cooperate with each other, to provide security and well-being and prosperity for everybody. And that requires that there is a consensus agreement on that the authorities that we choose in our democratic society, that they have the right to tell us what to do and we should obey them. I mean, that's the key about democratic or any political theory, right? How do I convince you, me, that the people in charge have the right to tell me what to do, that I have to get a vaccination, that I have to wear a mask, and then I obey them, that I should obey them. They have the right to tell me what to do, and I feel like I should obey them. Yeah, and if I don't obey them, they can coerce me, right? If I don't pay my taxes, they can fine me and arrest me. But that's use of fear is a fairly ineffective and inefficient compared to other societies. That's a fairly ineffective, inefficient way to control and mobilize the human resources of your community. You want people to obey the law because they feel like they should obey the law, not because they're afraid that if they don't, the government will torture me and throw me in jail, right? So democratic political theory reflects this need for people to participate. They want to participate in making the policies and the rules of society. So when those policies and rules are made, they feel like they should obey the outcome, including like the need to get a vaccination, the need to wear a mask. And democratic political theory focuses upon that legitimation function. We really haven't had much time to talk about the models of policymaking and the stages of policymaking. But the stages of making public policy include formulation, adoption, legitimation, implementation, and evaluation. But one of those key aspects of this legitimation. How do you convince people, if you can, that they should obey the law? Not that they must obey the law out of fear, but they should. And the polarization of society through social media is making that legitimation function more difficult, because it reinforces many people's desires to believe in evil conspiracies involving QAnon as the most extreme wild case, or the Jewish bankers, George Soros, and so on, or other wild conspiracies that cause people to find ways to circumvent laws, or to prevent new laws from being adopted to meet new challenges, like the once-in-a-century coronavirus global pandemic, this time with a coronavirus. Next time will be with some other virus. Or we need to restrict gun access, a new problem. And with the increasing polarization and intense dislike of people, that's what polarization means. It's more and more difficult, particularly in the American political system, for politicians to act, for political figures, political officials, professional politicians to keep their jobs if they undertake significant change through policy. I mean, America is set up to maintain the status quo. The American system was originally set up 240 years ago to make it extremely difficult to do anything significant on purpose. And this has become even more of a problem in the post-Cold War era, and even more of a problem with social media. I mean, at least during the Cold War, we could all believe that, oh my gosh, we have to cooperate because we're fighting the communists. The Soviet Union wants to take over the world. The Soviet Union's been gone for 30 years. And the social media has now reemerged, has emerged. So it's become even more difficult to get things done. But of course, social media, we still have elections in our winner-take-all system of divided government in the United States. And so that's the theme of chapter 10 of this week, right? So this is from Diana Owen. I don't know who she is, but she must work for Sabato and the rest of that company, or that group in the University of Virginia. The influence of social media platforms reached new heights in the 2020 election after having been a factor in elections for over a decade. So, you know, what was it? Yeah, around 1990, 1991, I used to use my first email, sent my first email messages. And I think I set up my first Facebook account in 2006 was when I first set up my Facebook account. Social media influencers become, you know, I did it because students told me about it. My students, my former students say, hey, you know, you should set up Facebook account. So I did it because the younger people encouraged me. So social media influencers became critical to the presidential campaign's communication strategies. Voters relied more heavily on social media as sources of stories and commentary. Journalists have had to compete with countless alternative sources providing news to voters. That's the term for these old organizations I was telling you about, these so-called legacy news organizations that used to be the only source of national news until 1980, when again in 1980, I remember when CNN started in 1980. And so that was the first alternative news source to NBC, CBS, and ABC in the United States. And that also includes newspapers, right? And I think Micah did a good job highlighting the important role of local media news sources, newspapers that have been going bankrupt along with the previous great financial crisis in 2008, and then the pandemic accelerating those trends that put them out of business, and of course put these local news issues within control by corporate companies. So like, for example, Gatehouse Media is one big company, corporate company in the United States. It's buying up these small newspapers. And of course, wanting to make a profit, because again, the news media business is a for-profit business. And that means it's intensely competitive. And that means I'm competing to get you to consume my news source. Consume what I produce, not what he produces, not what she produces, what I produce. Click on my computer website. Click, listen to my podcast. I have to convince you to follow what I want. And that means if I can succeed, I get more advertising revenue, I get more subscriptions, and I keep my job and make profit. And again, that involves emotion. You want people to want to consume the media product, the so-called news report that I am producing, and for whatever reason they consume it. Typically, they like it. And that means that's easy to fall into confirming their biases, including stereotypes and some pretty unpleasant biases and stereotypes about Blacks, about Jews, about Hispanics, about women, about gays. You pick them, right? All the negative stereotypes that people learn from the time they're born that become part of their background. And they can go to social media and find somebody that says what they want to hear or what they want to read. And of course, this is the campaign environment in which Trump and Biden were competing in 2020. And so they had to meet these potential voters in these alternative formats. And a big part of the media story for 2020 was misinformation, right? Misleading and untrue content circulated in vast amounts during the campaign. And it circulated in vast amounts because people circulated it. They went, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They get outraged. People like to get emotional, like, oh my God, you mean Joe Biden did that? Oh my God, he said what? I'm outraged. It captures your attention, right? It's all about capturing your attention in this for-profit social media business and keeping your attention. And so truth is not what drives making money for most for-profit, quote unquote, news companies. And you know, the people that get involved in these news companies, they build their careers. They invest who they are. Keep that in mind. You might say, how can people as journalists engage in that kind of activity? Because, you know, once you get a job, it becomes your life. Who is Tucker Carlson? He is the most influential television news reporter journalist in the United States. He spews right-wing Fox News type material, and he has become the most influential, one of the most influential people in the United States in the world. He's even referenced in Hungary with Viktor Orban. He goes to Hungary. And so the point is, once you start your career and you invest yourself, your career, think about your career, your identity, who you are, it's easy to make yourself believe that the bullshit that you're saying is actually true. Because I want to believe it. Because it makes me feel good about having all this influence, having all this status, having all this impact in the world. It's human nature. People tend to perceive a reality in a way that's self-serving, that serves my esteem needs, my self-esteem needs, my power needs. And so it happens all the time, including in the for-profit news media business. And so keep that in mind, you know, that once people become invested in this career and in the news media that has a certain bias, you're going to feel intense pressure to make yourself believe what you're saying. And this is true not just about the news media; it's true about anything. If you get a job, you know, you're looking for a job, you desperately need a job. People depending upon you make some money, your family, and you get a job in an oil company, in fossil fuel industry. Guess what? You're going to make yourself believe that oil and gas is a good thing because your job depends upon it. Your career, your identity. That's why it's difficult to change the status quo. And it's not because people are bad. This is human Homo sapiens nature. And you can imagine infinite number of examples of that. Okay? So distinctions between social media, legitimate news, and imposters becomes increasingly blurred in a media environment that voters had to navigate. So again, and we're running out of time here, and that's true for the upcoming election. 45% of people are going to vote Republican, and 45% are going to vote for the Democrat in 2024. It's that 10% of voters, that often define themselves as being independent, truly independent, like not independent, but I tend to be Republican, independent, but I tend to lean towards Democrat. That 10%, they are the ultimate deciders of the outcomes of these elections, because these people are truly independent. They will, for whatever reason, in terms of their life conditions, their life circumstances, that they are willing and able to exercise autonomy, to devote intellectual energy and time and thinking, and they have the cognitive skills and education, they have the genes that they were born with to be flexible in their political orientations. And it's only 10% of the voters. And so that's who will determine the outcome of these elections. And the other voters whose opinions are not going to change, the focus of these political campaigns, including through legacy media and social media, is to mobilize the vote, to get out the vote, get out those people who are going to vote for you, who otherwise often who would vote for you, to make sure that they devote the time and energy to actually voting. Get them out to the polls. That's another big focus. And how do you get them out to the polls? Those people who are not going to change their views, but your task is to get them to go vote. You appeal to their emotions, their rage, their anger, right? And of course, that means manipulating stereotypes, fears, insecurities, so that they actually motivate themselves to go to the voting booth at 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning before they go to work, to go out of their way and go vote before they go to their jobs, or request an absentee ballot in the mail. It takes some time. You got to go to the website. How do I get it? Download. Okay, I got to print this out. I have a printer. Get them motivated to vote. That's the main task of so much of this media reporting, is motivating people to vote, getting your voters out to the polls. Okay, that's where I have to stop here, because I got to go downstairs and get out of this room. So that's it for today. Okay, bye.